We want to look at David Harvey's concept of anti-value, and our interest is to understand the concept and whether it has any bearing on our understanding of capitalism. So we are not really interested in David Harvey's understanding what David Harvey's actually means by anti-value, but through understanding what he says about anti-value, we want to see if this concept can help us to understand capitalism better. So David Harvey is a British American geographer, basically. And he's a Marxist thinker as well. So he's one of the most famous contemporary Marxist geographer. But for the last 40 years, he has been rereading and lecturing and teaching Marxist works and applying them to modern capitalism. And he's written a lot of books. But a good thing about David Harvey is that he's always coming up with new things. So even though he has been on the scene for last, 40, 50 years, he still comes up with new things, and that's why it's good to read him, because he helps you think differently, and I think and helps you think or see things from angles you hadn't seen them before. So anti-value is one of the concepts he came up with. I don't know the exact date, but some of in his later works you'll find this concept. So he added this term to his vocabulary not a long time ago. So it's a fairly new concept in Harvey's. Relatively new, I guess. Because the book I have been reading recently is called Marx, Capital and the Madness of Economic Reason, and this book was published in 2017, I think. But it's a collection of essays, so I don't know when the original essays were written. They might have been written, some of them at least, before that. Anyway, and this since Harvey writes a lot, so I've decided to pick up on this review essay, because within this review essay you will see the author who is reviewing he's reviewing two books. One is this Marx, Capital and the Madness of Reason, and there's another book which is a collection of his old essays on geography and all that. So within this review, he talks about his conception of anti-value at length. So I thought I'll just read that before going to Harvey's own work. So let's do that. It'll take us a few sessions to finish this. And as I said, we are not interested in what Harvey thinks, but we are using his work as we use other works as sounding board, basically, to develop our own thinking. So we are not concerned about whether we get him right or not. So this author says, exemplifying the dynamism of Harvey's work, it extends his conceptual framework by developing a new theory of anti-value. Harvey begins by describing Marx's overall analysis of capital as value in motion. So capital obviously is a key concept in Marx, and Harvey describes Marx's overall analysis of capital as value in motion. So let's see. We have looked at these concepts before. So basically we have differentiated between capital and capitalism. So capitalism is a system which embodies, and this is a historical system, and it develops over time. And capitalism is a particular embodiment of the capital. And capitalism itself has a history, so even this particular embodiment develops and changes over time. So the main thing is capital, and capital can have manifestation embodiments which are not capitalisms. For example, we think socialism is a form of capitalism, dominance of capital or embodiment of capital. So socialists don't or some sort of socialist anyway, Marxist types, don't reject capital, but they reject capitalism, for example. And capital, we have defined it as so what is capital? Capital we have defined before, but here Harvey thinks that Marx's overall analysis of capital is where he defines capital as value in motion. So the important thing here is the concept of value and motion. Obviously, readily you ask, in motion for what? Or towards what? So it's a value in motion, generally V, as we have said, seeking itself or in search of itself. The value in motion in search of itself. And in search of itself, meaning in search of itself, and that result in multiplication of itself. And that's the same concept which Marx defines as accumulation, for the sake of accumulation. So if capital is a value in motion, as we said, in search of itself, in order to multiply itself, which is same as saying capital is accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And the only difference is here it makes clear, this definition or this description of capital makes clear the process which you need, the process which you need in order to make sure that the value accumulates itself, or whatever we are accumulating accumulate itself. Okay, so capital is a value in motion, in search of itself. So capital value in motion in search of itself. And even though it's a process, it requires a process for accumulation, or to go through a process. Capital itself is not a process. And that probably we differentiates Harvey from Harvey's as well as from Marx. We don't think capital is a process. Capital requires process. And in fact, capital is very wary of this process, because the main thing in capital is that it can't wait to multiply itself, accumulation for this. So it tries to shorten that process, shorten the circuit of capital, so to speak. Okay, so capital is a value in motion here. Is value in motion. Now value itself can put value into three types at least. Use value. So that's the value of a thing which an exchange value, and the third one is surplus value. So let's say take any product or anything. So chair, for example. The use value is that, I sit on it. That's its use value. At least one of its use values. So use value of a thing is satisfaction of needs. That's the use value of a thing. Exchange value of a thing is the value which I get through exchanging it for other things. So for example, if I sell one chair and get two tables, then these two tables are the exchange values of a chair. And surplus value is the if it took me like 50 hours, 10 hours, let's say, to, okay, don't worry about hours. If it cost me like $100 to make this chair, and if I can get 2 tables, and then if I can sell each table for $150, so $300 there, and $100 is my cost for chair and other costs, so that's $150 above my cost and all the labor and all that, for example. So this $150 is a surplus value. Okay, so in a sense, surplus value is what people call profit. So profit is a form of surplus value. Okay, now this is very rough, but it gives you an idea. So capital is the value in motion, and by value we can mean use value, exchange value, and surplus value. So which type of value is in motion? And another concept which Marx uses, and which Harvey uses as well, is the money. And historically there has been different forms of money, but today paper money. And the function of money changes according to a system in which it functions. So money is not necessarily all money is capitalist money. Capitalist money is the money which functions within the structures of capital. So in capital, money is basically a medium of exchange, I guess. And we won't say much and general representation of capital as well. So depending on, Marx would define money differently than classical economists, than Keynesians, etc. So we don't want to go too deeply into that, but we just wanted to put this concept here. And even though money has one thing to be noted here is money has exchange value. Yeah, money has surplus value. Well, money itself has no use value because you don't eat money or don't use money to satisfy your needs. You use it to exchange for things which may satisfy your needs. So these are the concepts David Harvey will be using. So capital is value in motion. I already said, and I'll say as we go along, that at times Harvey and Marx both seem to think that capital is a process. And that's what value in motion seemed to mean. But as I said, for us, capitalism, even though it requires process, it's not itself a process. It needs a process to multiply itself, and it's wary of this process because it wants to shorten the time needed to accumulate itself. So capital for us is accumulation for this pure quantification, accumulation for the sake of accumulation. It requires process, but it is itself not a process. And capital is not money either, because money can be used in non-capitalist ways as well. So a particular use of money can be capitalist or capital. When money becomes, the sole purpose of money become accumulation for the sake of accumulation, then it becomes a capitalist money. But if money is there just to facilitate exchange, it's not yet a capitalist money. Similarly, exchange value, obviously use value is not capital. Exchange value is not capital either. It becomes, so you exchange in order to get things you need and even to make some profit. So you can save some money for a rainy day. That's not capital. Exchange value is not. Exchange value become capital when its sole purpose become to multiply itself or facilitate multiplication of what you are exchanging, or capital in general. Now, similarly, for us, surplus value is not capital either, because in feudal society there was surplus value. But if the purpose of surplus value is, the sole purpose of surplus value becomes, is used to get more surplus value, then it becomes a capitalist surplus value. Obviously, capitalism cannot exist without surplus value, but surplus value itself is not capital or capitalism. So it might be a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for the existence of capitalism. Okay. So we haven't even touched the concept of anti-value yet, but these concepts are important to understanding that. So Harvey begins by describing Marx's overall analysis of the capital as a value in motion. So we'll continue from here. I think it's enough for today.